in cost of living between the US and Brazil. And we're doing things a little bit differently today because we spoke Portuguese in the English room to talk about Thanksgiving. So today we're going to be speaking English in the Portuguese room to talk about cost of living. Don't worry, next week we'll be speaking Portuguese again in the Portuguese room. Hi, Anderson. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Hi, everybody. How are you? All right,
So
so let's get started.
let's do it. So Anderson, you've been to the States before, right? What was your first impression of the cost of things in the US?
Well, it's very interesting. There are things that are cheaper in the United States, and there are things that are more expensive in the United States. For example, I remember going to the supermarket to buy lemons to prepare caipirinha the first time I went to the United States in Miami. And the price of a lemon was $1.
Wow. Yeah.
And here in Brazil, with $1, you can buy like 30 lemons. So I was like, man, how is that possible to be so expensive? It's just a fruit.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, if you take a look at the technology, here in Brazil, we pay a lot more. So I was looking for the possibility of buying a GoPro Hero 9, which was a new release in cameras, action cameras. And I was looking for the price, and here in Brazil, we're paying something like 5,000 reais. In a direct conversion, considering the price of real like um, five five reais for $1, we can consider that it's around $1,000. And meanwhile, the same
Jeez.
camera bought from an American website will cost 400 reais,
Yeah.
$400. So it's a lot cheaper, you know? It's less than half of the price.
That's crazy, especially when you consider the difference in like minimum salary between Brazil and the US. Like it's not even just more looking at the numbers, but if you look at purchasing power, it's like way more.
Yeah, that's it. Not even considering that, just comparing price to price, I can say that things that have high value added and things that can impact your productivity are more expensive here in Brazil. For example, the price of cars.
Yeah.
In the United States, you can pay around $10,000 for a car, right?
Yeah, I mean there's a wide range, but you can get a good car, a good used car for $10,000.
How much would you pay for a new car?
I would say like $20,000.
Right, so $20,000 versus five would be 100,000 reais. That
Yeah.
would be the same price for a good car here. But the difference is what we consider to be a good car here.
Mm.
Because here we have cars like, I don't know, Palio, Go, that are popular cars and they don't have much power. And in the
Oh,
United States, the popular car is Toyota, right?
yeah, we have lots of Toyotas, lots of Japanese made cars.
So these cars are a lot more expensive here in Brazil.
Oh, wow. How much would
Uh,
like a new Toyota be? Let's say like a, I don't know. You know what? That's true. I saw so many different cars there, like Alfa Romeo and Peugeot, the French one. Like I never see those cars in the States.
yeah, I know if you compare like Toyota Corolla, which is
Yeah.
available in Brazil and the United States, here in Brazil it's around 100,000 reais.
Okay. For a new one.
In the United States, it should be something around 20,000, right?
Dollars. Yeah.
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 Okay, so it's the same price.
But I don't know what is the culture like in Brazil of buying used cars?
Oh, we do it a lot.
Okay.
We buy lots of used cars. What about you guys?
Yes, I don't think I will ever buy a new car in my life.
All
Because
right.
there's like a lot of people that get new cars regularly, and so you can still get like a really good decent car for much, much less if it's used.
All right. Here in Brazil, one thing that's very traditional, and I don't know about you guys, is to pay everything in installments.
Mm. When that happens, are you paying directly to the person that sold you, or are you paying it to like a bank through like a
We
loan?
usually pay it to the store.
Yeah, that's not very common in the States. Like we'll take out a loan and pay the bank, but we wouldn't enter into a contract with the vendor.
All right. Because here in Brazil, we go to the car dealer and you just, I don't know, you just go there with no money. You just get out of the store with a new car and 5 years to pay.
And do you have to put money down when you buy it? Like, I have to put 1,000 reais up front.
Sometimes, yes, but not necessarily. You can just go there and buy it to pay in installments in the future, and you don't have to give 1 cent. Once I bought a car like this, it's a very bad deal, but it's possible.
What happens if you don't pay?
Oh, usually you get your credit lines frozen.
Oh,
Somebody's gonna
okay.
freeze your credit lines, and when you try to purchase other products in another stores, you're not gonna be able to do it. What happens is that in our culture, buying things in installments is something that we've been doing for a long time. So we value our credit lines. Like,
Ah,
oh,
okay.
I have no credit. That's a big problem for me. And I'm not talking about credit cards. I'm talking about credit lines with the stores.
So how do they evaluate your credit? Like, do they just look at your CPF number and there's some registry somewhere?
That's it. There is
Okay.
a unified registry. It's been around for a long time. And when you go there, you pay for a website to look up on the CPF numbers. And then you're able to see if this person has any trouble with any store.
Wow. So that's interesting because ours are just all run through the banks essentially. So I'm curious because in that system you have a lot more people that you're dealing with reporting. Like I don't know how that is for the stores, but oh, do you also pay interest then with those installments?
Yeah, usually we pay lots of interests.
How much interest, like what percentage on a new car would you say?
Oh, I don't know how much, but I know, for example, if a car costs 4,000 reais and you pay it in 4 years of installments, you're gonna end up paying like 70,000.
70,000 or 7,000
70
on a car that was 4,000 reais?
on a car
On
that was 40.
Oh, okay. I was like, wow. Yeah, that's almost twice as much.
Yeah,
That's a
that's it.
lot.
Sometimes it's even more. If you consider the installments when we buy a place to live, it's possible for us to pay like 700,000 in the end of a contract that was worth 100,000.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So
It's
seven
painful.
times the price of the place.
It's very painful. Yeah. I mean, we pay interest too, and sometimes it's bad, but I would say it's not that bad. Um, but like for example, I bought a really old car. It's like from 2000 and I paid $1,500 for it. And it runs. I mean, it's not beautiful or anything, but I get around and it's enough for me. So, I like that we have a lot of options of buying. Like you can either buy really new or you can buy used and make it work for your budget.
And what about the cost of living? Do you feel like the cost of living is different in a small town versus a big city?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Um, like in a small town, for example, I lived in a very small town in South Carolina. It had only 5,000 people, and I rented a three-bedroom house for $500 a month, which is just like insanely cheap to have that much space all to myself. And I also like kind of had a deal because I knew the owner. But even if I just had a one bedroom place for that much, it still is a great deal. And then in Seattle, where, most of my friends live, it's a big tech city. I would say like a decent rent, if you have roommates, would be about $1,000. So twice as much. If you want to live by yourself, it's closer to 1,200 to $1,500. And if you want a house, like if you have a mortgage payment, it's going to be closer to $2,000 a month.
Well, well, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
If you consider the proportion rate we said, like 5 times the price of the dollar versus real, it's like in a small town we would pay 2,500 reais
Hmm.
versus in a big city we would pay,
5,000 reais.
yeah, it's a lot of money. And here in Brazil, you can pay 2,500 reais to live in a good neighborhood in a big city.
Yeah, when I was in São Paulo, I rented like a really nice room uh, there for like, yeah, I think 2,000 reais a month. And
Yeah,
I was like, oh man, this is really nice.
that's it. The rental price here is a lot lower compared to the United States. But
Hmm.
what about the earnings? How much
Yeah.
should a person living in a small town expect to earn?
So the national minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. And so if you look at a monthly salary, that would be like $1,100. So if you're making $1,100 a month in small town South Carolina and you're paying $500 a month in rent, then that's like half of your salary going to rent.
Yeah,
In
it's a lot.
Yeah, in big cities like in Seattle, the minimum wage is twice that amount. It's $15 an hour. So that comes out to $2,400 a month, but still rent is going to be about $1,000. So if you're living at like the bottom edge of the salary range, you can expect to pay roughly half of your salary to your rent.
What about the mortgages?
The mortgage, yeah. I'm not a homeowner, so I don't have a lot of familiarity with it, but what I've seen is mortgages are usually higher than rents, and somewhere between 1,500 and let's say $3,000 a month, depending on where your house is, how nice it is, etc.
All right, so you should expect to pay half of your earnings just to live in a place, to have a place to live, to don't live on the streets.
Yeah, if you're making minimum wage, I think that's normal.
Especially if you want to live by yourself.
Yeah. And a lot of people, have roommates for longer because the cost of living is so high.
What about food? How much should you expect to spend on food?
Yeah, if you eat at restaurants, it's very expensive. Like the other day I went to get food and they had feijoada there. And I was so excited. You know how much this feijoada cost?
I don't know.
$20. It was $20 and I was like, "Oh my God."
Is it too much?
Yeah, I thought that was expensive. I mean, I would say most meals, like if you eat out, maybe the main dish will be $15 and then if you have drinks, obviously on top of that, and the tip, like eating out can be very expensive. I expect to spend at least $20 when I go out. But I think for me, like seeing feijoada in Brazil, like it didn't seem that as expensive. So I was like, ah, it's probably not even as good.
All right, all right. Just a parenthesis. Sarah said that in Seattle, mortgage is around 2,000 with
Okay, yeah.
HOA. What is HOA?
HOA is like when you live somewhere that has a governing body. I think it stands for like housing authority, but so some communities have a group of people that kind of manage the community. So there's like certain rules, like the neighborhood that my parents live in, there's rules about like when you can put your trash cans out, what color you can paint your house, like trying to, make the community look good or yeah. A lot of times in condominiums, there's an HOA as well.
All right, and this is a fee you pay.
Yeah, yeah, it's added to your mortgage, and a lot of times you don't have control over how much that fee is. Like it might change from year to year. So you can't like set that number in stone when you buy a house because it will change.
And she said that this price is for a three-bedroom. So it's very similar to the rent.
Yeah, I mean $2,000 a month, I for rent would be like a pretty nice place. Well, if it's a one bedroom and you're paying $2,000 a month, that would be a really nice place. But yeah, I have friends that live in two bedrooms in Seattle for $2,000 a month. So a three bedroom for $2,000 a month is even better.
Yeah, and it's the mortgage, so it's something she's gonna have for hers.
Yeah.
And later she can even rent the place and ask for the same price, and she's gonna have the house for free.
Yeah, it's funny though, because I think, when I grew up, I graduated when the 2008 economic crisis happened, and so many people lost money in their homes that for me, like, I don't really trust home ownership as a form of building wealth anymore because it just scares me. Like, you don't know if your house is going to appreciate or not. Um, and it's a
Oh,
big
and
purchase.
that's the difference between Brazilians because here in Brazil, people believe a lot in this story that we should invest in real estate, you know?
Hmm.
So here the cost of buying a house is a lot more expensive than the cost of renting a house.
Oh,
And it's so expensive that it doesn't even it can't be considered cost effective, you know? For example,
wow.
let's say you buy a house for 100,000 reais. You're gonna be able to rent this house for 1,000 reais or less.
Wow.
So it's a very low rent compared to the price of the purchasing.
Okay. That makes sense. So there it's not as profitable to like buy a house and rent it out.
No, here it's not at all.
Yeah.
And when I saw this price, I just thought, oh, it's a great investment. Buying and renting.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of people do that. And it is considered a way to like to build wealth, but I don't know. It just seems like a scary investment because it's like a 30-year loan most of the time. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, 30 years I'm going to be paying for this thing that it's like
Yeah,
most of what I've already lived my life.
yeah, that's true. And here in Brazil, talking about the salary, our minimum wage is 1,000. So it's around $200. That's the minimum
Oh wow,
salary,
yeah.
and it doesn't matter where you live. So if you live in a small town or if you live in a big city, the minimum salary is gonna be 1,000 reais, which is a
Wow.
problem because if you live in a big city, the cost of life is way more expensive than if you live in a small town. Another thing to consider is the place where you're gonna live. If you live in a big city and you want to pay less, you can, but you're gonna be living very distant from your workplace, you know? So
Yeah.
usually you're gonna get to live in a favela or in a very distant, but very, very distant place. And then you're gonna have to commute for hours to get
Yeah.
to your workplace. And if you live in a small town, you have more quality of life, but you don't have access to many things.
Mhm.
So it's a trade-off, you know?
Yeah. Do you think that after the pandemic, like now that more work is moving online, that will change things in cities for Brazil? Like, do you think it's going to have a permanent impact, or do you think things will go back to how they were before?
I can talk about myself. I started working online and I decided to go full time online. It's much better. It saves me time. I can have a better quality of life. I can impact more lives. So I decided to go full time online. And before that, I used to commute a lot, the whole day to get from place to place to give private classes. It
Mm.
wasn't so good, you know? Now I can see that, but I didn't see that back then. And I already had the channel. The channel had thousands of users, and I was still commuting to give private classes. Nowadays, I don't even give private classes. I just give group class, and my private students are just exceptions.
Mhm.
So people that I want to impact a little more, people that I feel like they need special attention. But before it was like the rule. I was only able to give private classes because I had to be there in person. And how could I put all these people together in a room? It would be very difficult.
Yeah.
So for classes, I think online classes are the future. For other jobs, I think they are also producing better results online. So many companies are not going to change. And I live now in another city. I don't live in São Paulo anymore. And here I can see lots of people coming to the city
Oh,
because
wow.
they start working online and they don't want to come back working in site, you know?
Yeah. And do you feel
I
like
don't know. I think
employers,
it's gonna cause impact for good. So it's gonna change lives forever.
do you feel like employers are open to keeping these work from home schedules after the pandemic? Like here in Seattle, we've seen a lot of big employers say like, okay, this is going to be a permanent change, like either everybody's going to stay work from home or we're going to do at least like 2 days work from home, 3 days in the office, like some kind of mix. It seems like culturally there's been a big shift to accepting that as a long-term change.
I think employers just want to make money. So if it's more profitable for them to keep people at home, that's what they're gonna do. And when people stay home, they save lots of money to the employers. Especially here in Brazil, that we have to pay for their transportation, we have to pay lots of things, and we can save all these things by keeping people at home. So I don't think the employers are gonna ask the employees to return to work unless it's really necessary, you know?
Mm.
So for people who work with sales, maybe it's important to have this face-to-face contact to increase sales. But for people who work with managing, I don't think they will ask people to return.
Mm, interesting. And so is it common for employers to pay for transportation for employees, you said?
Yeah, things that I noticed difference in Brazil. It's law. You have to pay for transportation.
Wow.
And another thing that's interesting is that in Brazil, we're paid by month. So
Yeah.
our salary is a monthly salary. And in the United States, people are paid per hour, which
Exactly.
I think makes people understand better their relation with money. Like, oh, how much do I make per hour? It changes the perception of their value. When
Hmm.
you start earning money per month, usually the employers can make you work extra and just don't pay anything, just say, oh yeah, your price is there, it's your monthly salary, you have a very good salary, you earn twice as the minimum salary, so they just make people work extra
Yeah.
and for a little money. And when you earn by hour, the employer doesn't want you to work extra, and the employee will charge that same amount of money or even more if they have to work extra. I noticed that when I first started working per hour, because here in Brazil the English schools pay per hour.
Oh, okay.
So I was earning 20 reais per hour, which is not a great salary. If you convert
Hmm.
to dollars, it's
Yeah.
like
I don't want to think about it.
$4 an hour. But it was a great salary for me because I used to work like 3 or 4 hours a day and make more money than I used to make when I was working 8 hours a day and being paid per month. So
Oh,
that's the thing.
yeah.
When you start working per hour, I think the relation starts becoming more transparent.
Yeah, that's a good point because it's true that like, our usually like our minimum wage jobs are paid per hour, and then depending on the field, once you work your way up, then you reach a salary, but it's usually at the higher range. Some like higher income brackets will still be paid per hour, like lawyers charge hundreds of dollars per hour, for example. But I do think it's a way of, yeah, protecting workers, because overtime is usually 1.5 times your regular salary. So once you work 40 hours a week, if you work more than that, then you're getting paid extra, sometimes even twice as much. So it's incentive to work more. Um, I never really thought about it like that, but it makes sense.
And how much do you guys work a week?
The average work week is 40 hours.
Okay,
Yeah.
40 hours. It's a lot of time.
Yeah. How much is it in Brazil?
Oh, it's the same, but
Oh,
I still think it's too much.
yeah, I know. And there's studies that say like, work expands to fill the time allotted. So you could really get the same amount of work done in much less time, but we just fill the time because we have to be at work for 8 hours. So it's not always very efficient.
Yeah, I've seen a speech about that. It was like, are you a productive person or a busy person? And when you pay people per hour, I think that's the bad side of it. People start being busy and not productive.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm gonna just um, dust the things again because I receive extra if I stay here dusting the books.
Yeah, it depends on the job. Like working at a restaurant, you usually always have something to do. Like you're just serving who's there. But if you're working on projects, then yeah, if you have a project that could take you 10 hours or 20 hours, but you get paid more for 20, then you're gonna extend the time. Um, One thing I wanted to ask you about though was benefits in Brazil. Like for in the US, most of our healthcare is tied to having a job. Now, with the Affordable Care Act, we have options to get healthcare that's not tied to our job, but it's a little bit complicated. How does that work in Brazil? Do you get healthcare through your employer?
Yes, we do. And it's exactly like in the United States, most of the private healthcare comes from employers. We also have vacations. and these vacations are paid vacations.
How many days is like common to get?
It's 30 days a year,
Oh my
and
gosh.
we also have a 13th salary. It's an extra salary in the end of the year,
What?
but I consider this to be just an illusion, because if you really think about it, you spend almost half of the year paying taxes. So there is the income taxes, and it takes around 30% of our salary, plus
Mm,
the taxes you pay when you negotiate products or service, and this is very high. So we spend half of the year paying taxes, and then the government says, "Oh yeah, but the employers have to pay the employees an extra salary by the end of the year." This is just to increase the consumption because the Christmas is about to happen and people will
yeah.
spend all their extra salary in on gifts and something like that,
Yeah,
or
it makes sense.
vacations because it's when most people take vacations, and it's not gonna really impact anybody's life. People
Hmm.
are just gonna live paycheck from paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, but I'm sure that people count on getting that 13th paycheck.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
But 30 days of vacation sounds awesome because we usually only get 2 weeks,
All
um,
right.
10 days
And
vacation.
is it paid?
It's paid. Yeah.
All right. That's
It,
good.
yeah, yours is paid as well, right? 30 days paid.
Yeah, and another big difference that I think it happens here is that if your employer fires the employee, they have to pay lots of money to the
Really?
employee. Yeah. And the government also pays to the employee an extra 3 months salary, so
Wow.
they can survive until they find another job.
Yeah, we don't
And
have
if the
that.
employee quits, they don't receive any of those.
Wow. So it's almost in your better interest to just be a bad
Fired.
employee and get fired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we watch movies, it's very classic in American movies. They say like, "Oh, you're fired," and the other person says, "No, I quit." Here
Yeah.
in Brazil, it would never happen. It would be like, "You're fired. Thank you."
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's so different. Like for us, it's better if you quit because if you're fired when you go to the next employer, like if they ask about it, it looks really bad if you were fired. But if you say that you quit, like you have the power in that situation. But you actually only really get benefits from the government if you lost your job through no fault of your own. For example, there's a pandemic and there was just no more work. That's when you can get services.
Oh yeah, but anyways, you had to get fired.
But it's not fired because you did something wrong, it's fired because there's no work, if that
Oh,
makes
but
sense.
here is the same because if you get fired because you did something wrong, it goes to your records. And
Mm.
then the employee doesn't receive any benefit.
Oh, okay.
But I
So,
mean something wrong like unethical and not like unproductive.
so you get fired for something unethical, but you wouldn't get fired for being unproductive?
No, I mean like let's say you got fired because you stole money from the company.
Uh-huh.
In this case, you're gonna be fired for a fair reason. That's what they call. So when you're fired for a fair reason, you don't receive any benefits.
Okay.
But if you're fired because the company doesn't like your productivity, or the company doesn't like your profile, or the company can't train you enough, or any other thing, they say that this is the company's fault and not yours.
Oh, okay.
So you
Interesting.
get lots of benefits. And talking about cost of life, um, What about the cost of entertainment in the United States? Is it expensive to have fun?
I think it depends on what is having fun for you. But I think if for you having fun is going out and having drinks with friends, that can be very expensive depending on how much you drink, right? But like a cocktail would be 12 to $15. If you have a few of those plus food, it can easily be $100 for a night out.
And what about going to, I don't know, Disney or
Oh
to
yeah.
laser tag, bowling?
Yeah, it's been a while since I did those things, I'm sure for all of us, right? But laser tag, maybe 15, $20 for a few hours. The movies, usually like $15 for a ticket plus food, which is really expensive at the movie theater here. I would say at least like $20 on snacks. So maybe 30, $40 at the movies. Disneyland is very expensive. I think it's like $100 or something for a ticket, like a 1 day ticket, maybe $80. And then the food there is very expensive and the rides. So, yeah, it just depends. What
But
about
I'm
in
just
Brazil?
thinking about the percentage of the salary. Um, if you think about it, if you go to Disney, you pay 10% of your salary. If you go to the movies, you pay 5% of your salary. And if you go to a bar, you pay 10% of your salary.
Yeah.
If you live in the countryside and if you live in a big city, it's half of this. So it's not really expensive because here in Brazil, if we go to the movies, we pay we pay around 5% of our salaries. If we go to Hop Harry, which would be a Disney here, we pay 30% of our salaries. If we
Wow.
go to a bar, we pay around 15% of our salaries. And if we go out to a restaurant, it's around 30% of our salaries.
Yeah, that's more, definitely more in Brazil. I think one thing that might be more in the States is childcare.
Oh, I have no
Yeah.
idea. I have no kids.
But it's like, for example, I have some people in my family with children, and I think they pay $2,000 a month for
Well,
childcare.
that's too much.
Yeah, and so that's why a lot of families decide to have one person stay home and take care of the kids because it's like as much as their salary could be sometimes. And I have a
Mhm.
friend in Brazil who has a kid and he had government provided childcare. Like he didn't pay anything. And to me, that was just like, what? Like that exists? That's amazing.
Yeah, but it's very low quality.
Mm.
I don't know if you wanna keep your children there.
And what would make it low quality, I guess?
Oh, the food, the training of the professionals,
Mm.
the values they're gonna teach your kids, lots of things. So
What are they gonna teach your kids? Like they teach them
uh,
bad things or
I'm
they just
gonna give you one example. I went to public school here in Brazil, and it was culturally bad if you like to study.
mm,
So this is a kind of value that comes from the group that's like, oh, don't study. If you
yeah.
study, you're gonna be very unpopular and kids are gonna beat you up.
Oh no.
So it's something really bad. I think it's free, but you have to consider, you have to go and visit the place and really see if that's okay for your kids. Many times you have no option because many people here live under the poverty levels, like acceptable poverty levels, but still I would say like if you want to have a very succeed family, you should consider where you're gonna put your kids because they will learn that from their childhood, and those belief systems will go with them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have kids either, but I'm not sure. I think you could still be paying a lot in childcare in the States, and it might not be that great, you
Yeah,
know?
there's always this possibility.
But there's like
And
no public option.
talking about clothing, how's that for you? Like,
So I'm kind of different. I buy all of my clothes secondhand. So we have this store called Goodwill that people will donate their clothes to, and if you're in a nice neighborhood, you can find really, really good things for a low price. So I love a good deal, and I usually shop there. But we also have stores at the mall that sell relatively inexpensive new clothes. Um, I don't like to shop there because I know that like environmentally it's not great, but if you want to buy a new outfit, you can buy one for pretty cheap at the mall.
and do you buy secondhand because of the environment?
Yeah, because of the environment and for my wallet.
All right, all right. What about the outlets?
The outlet malls, you can find really good deals on name brand stuff for pretty cheap. Like you can find stuff 50% off, even more sometimes.
And what do you consider to be a cheap t-shirt?
Mm, like
How
five,
much?
like $5.
$5. $5 is 25 reais.
Hmm.
So for 25 reais here in Brazil, you can buy some good brandy t-shirts.
Yeah, I would say like the higher brands, maybe like 15, $20 for a shirt, expensive brands, 60 to $100 for a shirt, which I would never, but yeah.
Yeah, here in Brazil, we have this possibility too. And if you go to a store like, I don't know, Pernambucanas, Torra Torra, those fast fashion stores,
Hmm.
we buy a t-shirt for 15 reais, which would be $3, a new
$3.
one.
Wow, yeah, that's really inexpensive. I found shoes to be a little bit expensive though in Brazil.
It depends. If you buy a leather pair of shoes, it's gonna be 100, 150 reais. If you buy Nike shoes, it's gonna be 600.
Yeah. I think I was just looking for running shoes, but I was in a big city and yeah, they were quite expensive. They ended up being like 45 US dollars.
Yeah,
And I was
running
like,
shoes
ah.
are very expensive in Brazil. And not only because people like to run, but also because people consider them to be fashion.
Mm.
So if you want to be like well dressed, you're gonna have running shoes. I think this was more common 5 years ago, but some people still hold this belief, so that's why it's so expensive.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you too, do you guys have paid family leave? Like when a family has kids, do you get time off to be with the baby?
I think only the mother, and I don't think it's a lot of time. I think it's like few weeks.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's possible, especially because they just under they just underwent kind of surgery, to
Yeah.
have the kids, so they have a few days off, and I think they have a few weeks, depending on the company, to stay with their kids, and the company pays this.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's the same here. Like the companies will give it to you, but it's not mandated by the government. There's no like required amount of paid family leave for men or women.
Oh, and I have just one more question for you, Kelsey. Do you live in a house or an apartment?
I live in a house and I live with my parents. Right now I'm at my cousin's apartment if you guys are asking about the
All
the
right,
view.
because it looks like an apartment, and I was like, oh, but I think Kelsey lives in a house. Uh, is it more expensive living in a house or living in an apartment?
Depends on where and how many roommates you have. If you live in a three-bedroom house with two other roommates, it would be cheaper than living by yourself in an apartment.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
living by yourself is always gonna be more expensive.
Yeah.
But let's compare like a three-bedroom apartment versus a three-bedroom house.
The house will be more expensive.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, here in Brazil, I think it's about the same price, but we feel safer in an apartment because of the doorman and all the electrical fences and stuff like that.
That's true. Yeah. I like being here because I do feel very safe, or just like I have my own little space to kind of hide out. And at the same time, I can like see people and I don't like necessarily feel alone, even though I am spending time with myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but I think it's easier making friends when you live in a house. I don't know
Really?
why, but I think so. You walk on the street more often. And then, since you are inside the apartment, you make no friends. It's pretty hard making friends in an apartment.
Mm. Well, it's been a while since I lived in an apartment, but I think here we don't really like spend that much time walking outside, especially if you have a house. You're going to spend most of your time in the car. So in an apartment, you actually have more opportunities to interact with folks. But my friends that live in apartments tell me that they still don't really talk to their neighbors. So
I think I have that romantic view, you know? Have you ever watched the movie The Jonases?
no.
It's a very good movie, and in that movie they talk to all their neighbors and they walk around, they go to a place to another place making friends, and I was like, oh yeah, that's the American way of living when you live in a house.
Oh yeah, I think that was very romanticized. I mean, my parents have lived in this house for 30 years and I've only spoken to my neighbors like a few times.
And I also watch some TV shows, and they always get to know their neighbors. Like Desperate Housewives, the
Oh yeah.
neighbors go to the door with a pie. Hi, welcome.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. Like I have had new neighbors in the area bring Jello or whatever, but it usually doesn't turn into a friendship.
All right,
I think it
all right.
depends on the neighborhood though, like anything. People have different cultures.
I moved to this apartment, and nobody brought me Jello.
But you also moved
I would have
during
loved it.
COVID. People are forced to be less friendly. But yeah, so what at the end of the day, what do you think? How's the cost of living compared to the US and Brazil?
Well, I think Brazil has a better score.
Mm.
I'd say that because although we have this minimum salary of 1,000, it's not the standard. Like the standard salary here in Brazil, I feel like it's 2,500 reais,
Hmm.
and the cost of renting an apartment or renting a house is a lot more fair here. And the only problem for us is the electronic gadgets and stuff like that. And we can always buy that from another website abroad and import those products. Another problem is the car. So if you really want to have a car, I think it's better living in the US,
Yeah.
especially if you want to have a Tesla car, which we don't have here.
Oh my
Oh, and I
gosh.
really want to have one. But besides that, I think here in Brazil we have a better quality of life for a lower price. That's
Hmm.
my perception. On the other hand, I think in the United States you have better opportunities to make more money. And if you have the discipline of saving, you're gonna end up saving more money in the United States than you would have if you lived in Brazil.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And also, like with the car thing, we essentially, need cars to get to where we need to go because everything's so spread out. So I think that also kind of forces it to be more accessible because more people buy cars, there's more cars on the market, and then you end up getting a better deal. But yeah.
All right. So thanks for the call, Kelsey. Uh, Guys, if you are watching this on YouTube, you can also rewatch this on Spotify. You just have to look there for the Portuguese Room. We also have the English Room podcast there. And Kelsey would like to do the honors of closing.
Yeah. So, thanks everyone for listening, and we will be back on Friday to talk about Black Friday stuff. If you have any questions or comments, leave them on YouTube or check us out on Spotify.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye.